Seriously.
Why don't you let him take care of that?
Okay, we're recording the screen. I'll make that a little bit bigger. And
all right, and Brian, you're recording your end too?
Let me go ahead.
Not the screen, but the audio.
Yes, the audio.
All right, my audio's on too as well.
we're recording audio over here.
Nice. Okay, so this time I think we'll try just 5 claps, because by clap 5 we should all be in sync. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Something tells me that is not going to work.
Well, at least
because of the lag.
There's a lag here, but on our individual recordings, it makes it easier at least to find a place that we've all started. So
I think what might work, Todd, is if we each say our name and then individually clap.
Oh, there we go. Why don't you start us off, Brian?
Okay. Brian.
Mark.
Todd.
I feel like we're now the Partridge Family.
It's at the romper room where she's looking through the, I see Mark and I see Brian.
Romper stomper, bumper boo.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll start, and then Mark, you can put in the music, and then we can go. All right, I'm gonna clap one more time. It's Back to the Future 2 meets Power Rangers. We watched Backtime, which team It's back to the Ooh, what's behind Brian? Did Brian do that or did Mark do that?
I did that.
That's awesome. Okay. It's Back to the Future 2 meets Power Rangers. We watched Backtime, which means it's time for another Portland at the Movies.
In a world, in a time, in a land of eternal beauty, all that stands between a city and a disaster. In a city where anything can happen if you thought you had seen it all.
He's trying to save the past from the terrorists. Can you help us?
I am helping you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Portland at the Movies. My name is Todd Workoven, recording remotely from down near Wilsonville, Oregon, sort of near the bar location of Extraordinary Measures down by Wanker's Corner, and joining us from the locations of a walk in my shoe, a walk in her shoes. Which one was it?
A walk in
Christopher Walken shoes is Brian the Unipiper Kid. How are you, Brian?
Yes, doing well. I like this idea of identifying ourselves from the nearest Portland filming location.
You and Mark kind of share one. There hasn't been a lot over there other than that house location for Walk in My Shoes. So, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm well. Not too far from the school where Dr. Giggles was filmed.
Oh, nice. Well, there we go. So we're really spreading our locations thin there, I guess. But we are in different locations, but we are in the same time together, much like a lot of this movie. So this movie, actually, Brian, you bought on VHS with a group of other films that we haven't gotten to yet. So how did you stumble across this movie called Backtime?
I'm trying to remember how...
Were you on a Stephen Miller kick? Is that what was going on?
Actually, I think that is exactly what it was. Somehow we found Stephen Miller, who was the director of this movie.
Because I think he did this Visions too. Is that what?
Visions, yeah.
So he also did this movie Visions, which you bought at the same time. So.
I know what it was. It was through Love and Dynamite.
Oh yes, which I also have sitting here, which you also gave me. So.
I know one of these. So I found all 3 Stephen Miller movies at once and purchased them all online. I think 2 came from eBay, 1 came from Amazon. And they were all on VHS. And one of them was unopened. Was it this one that was
yes, this was factory sealed. And it says at the bottom, if you can see it, it's a special edition. But there is nothing else on this except for the movie. So
I only found this out today, but they did, I think in the UK, release a DVD of Backtime.
Oh, okay, for all the
I
Tom
wonder if there's
Baker
any
fans.
special features.
I know, and that's why I'm kind of bummed. I would love to know if there's any special features on it.
Well, anyway, why don't you can you set this movie up somehow? It's going to be tricky because it is like I mentioned in the opening, it is a time travel movie, so it does get a little convoluted, and we should try to go through it without, I guess, spoilers at the beginning. You know what I mean? Kind of walk through and oddly enough,
Are we gonna spoil the whole movie?
I think we're gonna have to.
there's almost, well, we can try how about we try to not as long as we can, and then once we get to the end, because this movie is available to watch on YouTube if you don't have the VHS. So I think if you just probably do a YouTube search for Backtime full movie, you might be able to find it. So you can watch it. So usually we save that question for the end, but do you guys recommend people watching this before they listen to this episode?
Absolutely.
I do.
Yes.
I absolutely do. It has some wild twists and turns and reveals that happen and all the things. And so I hate to set up a movie to say, expect the unexpected, but genuinely that's kind of what this movie is.
I think,
and there's one review on IMDb, and that person says exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Make it through the first 30 minutes or so because they're kind of rough, but if you make it to the end, it's got some good payoff.
Oh, you mean the first 30 minutes? You mean the first chapter of what is apparently an episodic television show with different titles that show up that sometimes say episode and then sometimes don't at all?
It's less of an episodic format and more of a ring cycle.
Yes, we will get to the time bones or whatever those were. So yeah, if you want to look up the movie, like I said, it's available on YouTube. If you can't find it by that search, you can go to the YouTube channel RIP VHS, and you can type in Backtime in the search there, and you should be able to find it. So go enjoy yourself. I do have to say, this is the first time in the history of this podcast that I've only watched the movie once.
Whoa.
And I just finished. I had watched the first 20 minutes and then set it aside for some reason, and then just didn't get around to it. And I thought from the first 20 minutes, I was like, I kind of want to, because usually upon second viewings of these movies is when everything just falls apart and I begin to hate them. So I kind of wanted to preserve this one as a fun experience. But of all the movies to watch twice, I'm like, I should go watch this again.
Yes.
Now that I kind of know how it unfolds. So
I feel of any of the movies we've reviewed, this one demands a second viewing more than any other.
Absolutely.
So do we know much before we get into the movie, do we know much about Stephen Miller? Like, why did you stumble upon him? Was it because David Walker talked about him? I forget how that unfolded.
I believe that David Walker mentioned Love and Dynamite.
Right.
And so I went looking for Love and Dynamite and then found that the director of Love and Dynamite only directed 3 films, and all 3 of them were filmed in Portland.
Okay, so he is not one of the cases where he went off to Yugoslavia and has made 60 movies a year like that other guy, Philip.
No, this was his last film, Backtime. So we're going through the Stephen Miller filmography in reverse order.
So the first thing I noticed in this movie, before even there was a visual other than a so-and-so production, was that the font is this font called Skia, I think.
It's so great.
And it's the same font. Mark, you'll remember this, back when we worked at the advertising agency, we made those candy bars, and then we made it was like a self-promotion for our agency where every department kind of had their own candy bar and would describe what they do. So when we go to get clients, we could describe our full service agency or whatever. And one of the candy bars, I remember our designer friend Heidi, when we were designing them, used that Skia font for. And so I was like, hey, it's our candy bar font.
It was the papyrus of the 90s.
Yes, I would describe it as caveman font.
There you go. I dropped my glasses. I got so excited about the font choice. That, and there's a lot of puka shells because this movie, it says on IMDb that it's from 1998, but the copyright at the end of the movie and on the box is 2001. So much like this movie itself, the plot, I think this movie is time traveling.
Maybe that is the 2001 copyright date of the special edition.
I did wonder that, but it
Ah.
was at the end of the credits too. So that's kind of why I was like, well,
It
that's
is weird.
But you can tell it's set in the late 90s because this movie is dripping with puka shell necklaces.
Yeah, this is the most 90s movie that I've ever seen filmed in the 2000s.
Yes. It reminded me a lot, like I mentioned, Power Rangers because of the costumes, but it reminded me a lot, and like I did watch a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but a lot like that. The main character looks exactly like Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so the whole movie it was like a mix of those two things.
I have not ever once watched an episode of Doctor Who, but
Yeah, me
this is
either.
exactly what I would imagine Doctor Who to be like.
I think the production values of this was better than what I've seen of some vintage Doctor Who's, that's for sure.
You know the Doctor Who connection with this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but and just kind of from the get-go before we kind of dive into it, I was kind of impressed with some of the production design and the different props and stuff. I mean, it wasn't super great, but a lot of time and I think some money went into a lot of those little elements.
This movie has one thing that none of our other movies typically have, and that is heart. This movie has plenty of heart behind it.
There you go.
You could tell it was
100%.
crafted lovingly.
Yes. And
Yep.
I was, because there are a lot of things going for this movie, although I would hesitate to call it a good movie. And so I guess as we kind of break it down a little bit more, because I'm trying to put my finger on, like I said, I'm fresh off this movie. So it'll be interesting to see like where it does kind of fall apart, because I don't know that I could recommend it to someone who's just like looking for a good movie to watch. You know what I mean? But so Brian, why don't you kind of get us started as far as the plot and getting us into the discussion here?
Okay, so the movie is broken up into 3 rings, as the movie calls them. When I first saw that and it jumped from ring 1 to ring 2, I don't know about you, but I was like, okay, I know what this movie is doing. It's going to be an anthology movie about 3 different little time travel vignettes.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't
That's-
think that.
That is not.
I just
where
thought maybe it
went.
was made for, like actually made for a television pilot, so that each little chunk would be its own episode, but it doesn't really hold together like that either.
No. But it starts with we're introduced to the Backtime Labyrinth, which is an underground time travel facility set 7,000 years in the future. And we are introduced to 2 of the characters. One who is called Sarge, which is a giant robot. If you are familiar with Power Rangers, think the little, whatever his name is, and he has the light that goes across his eyes.
Yeah, and I don't know any Power Rangers names, but all of the costumes looked like they were from Power Rangers, which isn't to say they look cheap, because like Power Rangers has that aesthetic where it kind of looks cheap, but it's still really all put together and thought out, and like all the details are there.
Yeah.
And that's why I wrote down at one point, who is this movie for? Like, it's not a kid's movie, although there's not like sex and there's not violence and there's not profanity and all that, but it's not like a kid wouldn't appreciate the plot of this movie, which is all about like love and marriage.
I think it's for like people who would have been watching the Sci-Fi Channel at the time.
I'd say like young dudes, like bros, would love this movie. If you like Primer, you'll probably love this movie.
I was thinking that you see those charts that people try and map out the whole plot of Primer. I wanted to see one of those charts for this movie.
Or Backtime.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So
we are introduced to Sarge, the robot who controls the time portal, and his little helper friend who is called Zymo, who is played by a short person with a lot of spunk.
At first, I thought Zymo was because in the credits is Tom Baker, and I haven't watched Doctor Who, but I know that he was on the show, and I thought it was him like on his knees because it is played by a little person. I was like, oh no, but he is only Tom Baker's only the voice
The voice
of the robot, so he is
Sarge,
never
the robot.
seen in person. So he had
Yeah.
a day's worth of work that he
So
did, and
Tom Baker literally phoned it in.
he literally phoned it in.
From London.
But let's talk a little bit. So Zymo is the little person slash creature slash. I had a lot of notes that just said, "What is Zymo?"
I watched this movie with Sarah and my wife, and she dubbed Zymo the time troll.
Okay.
Time troll, yeah. Sarge referred to Zymo as someone who came from a really bad time.
Yeah.
And so imagine 3,000 years in the future, the world gets all messed up, and one other character in the movie refers to Zymo as a mutant, but
Okay.
there's no other reference to that.
Because Zymo has like this little cyborgy thing over one eye, but then he's also dressed in rags and acts like an animal. So
Yep.
I guess mutant is where we're at with that, because it was super weird.
Super weird, and played by a person named Sherry Kay. And I'm assuming that Sherry is female gender.
And a huge fan of our show.
Hopefully.
So call us, Sherry. As much as I did not like the character of Zymo, I did think the actor threw their spirits and their energy into it. So, but yeah, Zymo.
And Zymo doesn't talk at all through
Right.
the entire movie.
Right.
No utterance of any sound.
No.
And in certain scenes when Zymo, now I'm not, maybe this is how Sherry Kay actually gets around, but something about Zymo's walking seemed artificial to me.
Well, and they had like a lot of zany sped up motion of Zymo doing things, and I don't know, sometimes it was meant to be comedic, but then other times I didn't know if it was just to make it kind of look even a little bit stranger, or to kind of play up this. What I do want to make, we've never made merch for our show before, but I really want a t-shirt that just says, "What is Zymo?" with a picture of Zymo on it, because that would be fascinating.
Vote
Yeah,
Zymo.
So there's the God of Time, the Keeper of Time robot, which is the Tom Baker voice, and then Zymo. So we have those two characters in this cave of time that has this time portal.
And then from there, we cut to four 20-somethings living in a house on the side of the highway, Highway 30, heading out of Portland.
Okay.
Which I did find that house.
Did you?
Okay.
Okay.
I did.
Nice. Because it was a cool old house, but then like right across the street was a barrel factory of some sort.
And when you look at it on Google Maps satellite view, the barrels just stick out like a sore thumb, and it was pretty easy.
Is
pretty
the house
easy to
actually still there?
It is still there. It shows up in Street View. Yep.
Because I thought it would be like that old, what's that old, it's not a Coca-Cola building, but it's the one right before the St. John's Bridge, when you're going up Highway 30, and it's like nothing but like that reclaimed nuclear wasteland. But then they tore it down a couple years ago, the big it's like PGE or something like. Anyway, I forget. It was that super cool old, the house, the Fight Club house. Anyone? No?
I don't.
Okay, well, I'll put it on our map just to confuse people. But, so yeah, we go to the 20-somethings, and there's a couple whose names are Kayla. Well, Kayla has a couple that used to be but broke up. Kayla and Jason. They used to date, and they broke up. Kayla is now marrying some other guy, and it's her wedding day.
Yes.
Yep.
Or close to it.
Or close to it.
So she stops by the house to tell her ex, Jace, that I'm getting married. And then, it's like either the same day or the next day, very soon. And, Jace is perturbed and obviously still has feelings for Kayla. And then Kayla runs off to the wedding, and we are introduced to the other two roommates. Thad, I believe, is the guy's name.
Yes.
Sad. Yep.
Thad,
Lazy-
who wears
he's
two shirts
lazy
and two
Thor.
pairs of pants at the same time. That's how I imagine Todd would dress in the 90s, had I known Todd in the 90s.
Just layers and layers of clothing that are much too big for my small body.
Two
Yes.
pairs of cargo shorts at the same time.
Imagine all the things I could put in my pockets. So yeah, we have and he's kind of a lazy stoner, although he doesn't smoke weed in the movie, but he kind of drinks, and he's this kind of philosophical environmentalist hippie guy. And then there's also the girl that's friends with them.
Yeah, and her name is Una.
Yep.
Oh, was it?
Oona.
Because the first thing when you get the chapter titles or whatever, or the episode titles or whatever, it just said Una seems confused, and I was like, well, she's not the only one. Who is Una? What is going on?
That wasn't even the title of the episode. That was just like you know how when you used to watch the X-Files and they would have like the time of the day at every scene change? It was like a scene change and there's like 2:30 p.m. Una is confused, and I'm like, did they just type that in from the script?
It was stage direction that accidentally made
Yeah.
it into the film. Well, and that was a weird part too, because they would show like 2:30 p.m. Una seems confused, but they wouldn't put the date like July 10 or whatever. Like that wasn't consistent, which you think should be in a movie about cyclical time travel, but then they would be like 2:30. But that's not the important time. The date is the important part, not the time of day.
And for certain scenes, they would say the day of the week, like Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
No other context.
So yeah, we have the roommate and then this other girl, and they kind of argue at one point, and this is much later in the movie, but the kind of lazy philosophical hippie roommate who reminded me of Lazy Thor from Avengers Endgame, just a big giant, bushy beard and all that. They're talking, him and this other girl, and Thad, which is his name, he says, "How much moon floss do you use?" Which is apparently code name for toilet paper.
Thad had some amazing names.
And then they had a moon floss, and then they had a whole discussion about how much toilet paper they use. Like Sheryl Crow style, using one square for the environment or whatever. It was insane. But yeah, so they're kind of the characters, and then we have this main couple, and as Kayla is going to get married to this other guy, all of a sudden, a time portal appears. Correct? How is the time portal introduced?
Let's see. The time portal is first introduced when Kayla gets abducted from her wedding.
That's right. She's walking down the aisle and literally just disappears.
Right. So Kayla gets sucked up by a time portal, and then we cut back to the house, and at the house, a second time portal opens, and it dumps Kayla on top of Jace in the front yard of the house.
Yeah, that's right. And then they go, and they themselves are dumped out there, and all of a sudden, another robot-looking thing, not the Time Lord, but another kind of gladiator-looking person.
We will call them the Time Terrorist.
The Time Terrorist, that's right.
Time Terrorist.
Shows up and chases them through all of the barrels across the street.
Right. So the Time Terrorist chases them, and then another portal shows up, and we lose Jace. And then Jace goes to the Time Labyrinth, and there he meets Kayla and another version of himself.
Right. So that's when we start kind of getting into multiples of people and overlapping of time. This would make a really interesting, or not graph, but primer chart of time hopping. I did like how in the future, I believe it's 2138. I don't know why.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They are still
using cash.
Push the dollar coin. That's something that's never going to die. And they do a bunch of chases, and then they're locked in a cell together that has bunk beds, and they do a bunch of stuff, and she's still holding on to her bouquet.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
She's like, and what am I supposed to do to be? And she holds up her bouquet that's still all perfect from like
All right.
6 hours and 2,000 years ago. I don't know if this tracked with you guys, but I did have a problem with Kayla's wedding dress because it looked like a bridesmaid's dress. She was not wearing a wedding dress. But
I didn't think I saw any bridesmaids at the wedding.
I don't think so either. I think it was just her.
There were bridesmaids.
Oh, were there?
Oh,
now,
okay.
where was that filmed? Because that was on top of a hill somewhere. Was that Tabor?
Clearly Mount Tabor.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because at another point they were in a big public park like that, but then you can see Can you see Mount Hood from Mount Tabor too? I don't think I've ever been to the top of Mount Tabor.
Yep.
So you can see both ways,
Yeah.
the city and yeah. So that's where the big wedding scene was that she kept being abducted from.
Mm-hmm.
I did like when they got abducted and they started walking through the labyrinth of time or whatever that was called. That Kayla is holding like a oil lantern, like the old timey oil lantern.
Yeah,
broken off at the top, totally.
Yeah, and then Jace is holding this glowing orb that has like no discernible, like it's just this big future thing, and she's using like this old broken oil lamp, which made no sense for 7,000 years in the future.
So from that point in the story, Kayla, and for the next, 15 minutes, the whole plot is Kayla and Jace just trying to get back to their original timeline.
Yes.
As they are trapped and running around the labyrinth by the time terrorists.
And then they also start to go have doubles of themselves because they realize that they also get sent back to a point where they're not just being chased through the barrels, but they're watching themselves get chased through the barrels and have to do like basically a Marty McFly thing of hiding behind the car, planting the book in the car, in Biff's car, while not being caught by the skateboard chase that's happening in the background from the first movie type.
Yes. That is exactly what happens. And then they end up re-experiencing the chase through the barrel factory. And we learn that the time terrorist in that scene was actually Jace wearing a costume of the time terrorist.
Of the time terrorist.
Yeah.
Right. And then, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Well, and then, so like that's kind of progressing and all of a sudden it just says 10 years later. Right?
No.
Oh, what happens before that?
Before that, they end up eventually Kayla and Jace use the time portal, and both of them arrive at Kayla's wedding.
Right, and then Kayla gets married as planned.
Yes. Kayla gets married, and then Jace walks off.
Away into the distance.
And then that's when we cut to the next scene 10 years later.
Okay.
And that's a new ring cycle.
Oh, okay. The second ring cycle. There is, Mark, do you have the movie pulled up?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if either of these will work, but I have something at 34 minutes.
Yes,
okay.
We need to talk about that scene at 34 minutes.
Okay, I don't remember what it is, so I'm excited to hear it again.
Oh.
I just have time bone written next to it, but I don't know if that relates.
I don't think that relates.
Okay.
So let me do this and do that.
So I'm going to set this scene up and just say that if you look back at our Portland at the Movies films that we've discussed, and classic scenes that stick out to you, I'm pretty sure you will agree that the peanut scene from Defula ranks up there in terms of our all-time favorite. In fact, we compared it to the flower shop scene from The Room.
Yes.
And I think this scene also fits right in with those other two scenes.
Okay, so why don't you give us some context to what we're about to hear?
So what we're about to see is 10 years later, Jace is realizing that he has been unable to move on from his feelings of Kayla, and knowing that he potentially could still have the power to time travel, he needs to go back and win back Kayla. So in order to do that, he has decided to quit his day job at a factory.
That's right.
Okay, let me make sure that you can hear this. Nope, I cannot.
I cannot either, Mark.
Okay, so that didn't work. Let's try. Let's try this. And can you hear? Can you hear that?
No.
Why is that playing that? Hold on. Can you hear that?
Nope.
No.
Okay, now I'm going to share the audio of my share as well. If I can do that. Hold on. Can you hear that?
Nope. What bridge is that?
I don't know.
I think it's at
Looks like
a plant.
like a factory.
Yeah.
Got weird things on the windows, it looks like.
We're gonna pause here for a second as I look something up. Sorry.
For station identification.
Share screen. Pop up. Click the checkbox in the lower left. You will see a pop-up window where you select. Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, oh, nope, nope. Hold on.
There we go.
Hey. So right there is where it starts.
Hey, boss.
Hey, Jace.
I'm quitting.
Really?
There's something I gotta do in the St. Ed.
Oh, you're sure now?
I'm sorry.
Good luck.
That is exactly like the flower shop scene.
Yep.
What I mean, what? Are you sure? Yep.
Yeah. Well, they needed a plot point to happen.
Wow.
And they had about an hour to film. And
at the factory would only because that was in the factory, so
it
it's
was
not
in the
like,
factory.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh!
And so this is like during the lunch break at the factory, and so this wasn't a long drawn out. Let's go to the office and talk about this. Let's counter offer. This was all right. He's quitting his job. Might as well.
Just
send
let
it.
him go. Let him
Sure.
go.
Yep. Okay. Oh, hi, doggy.
Oh, hi, doggy.
Okay, Mark, can you go to 3740? Because I think they have a discussion about time travel there. And I think it might be between the roommate and the other girl, but now I don't remember.
Okay.
Maybe. But maybe not. Parallel universes. Alternate realities. Branches in the time stream. I mean, if you go back and change the past, you're not going to be you. And you may have a friend Thad, but it won't be me. Have you ever loved a woman? Really loved her?
Tell me,
Yeah.
have you ever really?
You know why I'm doing this, then. Enough's
All right, I
enough.
think that could be it, though. Maybe that was the spectacular discussion about time travel I had thought of when I noted that down. But yes, this is 10 years in the future, and now Jace is wishing that he would have told Kayla that he loved her when they were both trapped in the cell together in the Time Lord's lair or whatever.
Right. So that's sort of the overarching plot of this second episode. So episode 1 was about returning home. Episode 2 is about Jace winning Kayla back by using time travel.
Right.
And we left out the detail that while they were initially trapped in the time labyrinth, Zymo had given both Jace and Kayla a little like porcelain glitter ring.
Yeah, well, I don't know what they were. It just looked like badly made clay rings of some sort.
Covered in glitter.
Covered in glitter. So yeah, and those are apparently time bones. What are those?
Time bones.
Wishbones.
I swear they said time bone at one
They
point.
did.
I wrote it
She
down.
said
Yeah.
wishbone. Yeah, it's like a wishbone.
And apparently, so after Jace returns and Kayla both return to the original time stream, Jace decides to bury his time bone
Yeah,
on
he
Mount
does.
Tabor.
I buried my time bone on Mount Tabor should be like a folk song.
So he employs Thad at this point to help him dig up his time bone from Mount Tabor.
It wasn't very deep either. It was like 2 scoops down, and that's it.
I'm kind of in disbelief at the words coming out of my mouth right now. If anyone were to just hear this out of context.
Well, we're living in a time where like people are just very casually talking about the quarantine. So like that's where our bar is right now. So I don't think anything is any stranger. So he wants to use the buried time bone to travel back or forward. Yeah,
he wants to travel forward in time back to the labyrinth and convince his past/future self that he needs to tell Kayla that he loves her.
Right.
That's his plan.
So he uses the time bone and snaps it in half or whatever, and he gets sent back or forward to when they were in that prison together. And so he's had 10 years that he's done nothing but live in this space of regret and live in this what if and plan out, if I had this chance again, what am I going to do? He apparently just never made a plan because he gets there and has nothing. He has no ideas.
Right, he can't say anything. He says he puts his head up because in the future / past, this is when they are in prison. So he goes to the prison and talks in Kayla's ear as if it's
Kayla's in a bottom bunk, and
right.
his past self is in a top bunk.
Right,
but they're in a bunk bed.
Yeah, and he's talking to her as if it's coming from his other self in the cell together with her. And as he is trying to convince her that he loves her, who shows up but the
future past Kayla.
Kayla, also from 10 years in the future.
With a terrible haircut.
And that's how you know she's
That's
from
how
the
you know she's from the
future.
future.
But it reminds me of the Pina Colada song at this point, because they find each other doing the same thing.
And then so picture, so the prior, I'll say prior instead of past, the prior Kayla and Jace are in the bunk beds in the cell. So they are separated by like 3 feet. Now there's the prison wall or whatever, and on the outside of that wall there are 2 like vent side, like if you look at your air conditioning floor vent, those size vents cut out of the brick wall, one by the top bed, one by the bottom bunk, but also separated by 2 or 3 feet. They're whispering to their prior selves, and their prior selves can't hear the other one. Like prior Jace cannot hear the full volume conversation coming from the bottom bunk, and prior Kayla can't hear the conversation going on the top bunk.
That's
It
true.
is wild. Oh, that was so crazy.
What comes of this conversation? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember, but all I said, I did write down Jason's acting is not bad, or Jace's acting. He was, I believe there was a tear involved. It was committed.
I guess long story short, what their plan ultimately works, and Kayla and Jace fall in love in prison. And this time, when the whole cycle plays out and Kayla and Jace return to Kayla's wedding, this time, instead of getting married, Kayla runs off with Jace. And they, as they are running off, though, Zymo
Right.
snuck off and followed them. And
Zymo.
Kayla and Jace steal a car, and Zymo hops in with them, and then the 3 of them are on the run from the rest of the wedding party.
It's the wacky road trip section.
It was
Yes.
a wacky road trip.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's the wacky road trip. So they're kind of driving along the back roads of Oregon. They stop at a farm at some point, and Zymo. So imagine yourself an Oregon farmer. And you're farming one day, you're farming your chickens one day, and this car pulls up and a Zymo comes out. And much like I had written down, you probably ask yourself, what is Zymo? And they just show Zymo like running around his farm, and like he's in with all the chickens. And the farmer like is acting surprised, but not as if there is a future past cave creature running around your farm, and so they just give him some money to not say anything.
This is when they speed up Zymo's footage, and so he's waddling around at this like unnatural pace. It kind of looks like did you ever see when Tim Conway does his dwarf character?
Yes. That's
It's
exactly
totally. They may as well just put in yakety sax during this as he scampered about the farm.
Yes, this is the Benny Hill portion of the show.
And they also, so like Zymo has shown himself much like kind of like a puppy on a road trip, like when you let them out and they just run, or like you let them in the front seat and they can't hold still. Like that's what Zymo is. He's like pushing all the buttons in the car and turning the wipers on, and he's like getting up in their laps, and like, you guys have a back seat, put Zymo in the back seat. They kept putting him in the front seat with him. It was driving me crazy. But then is when we get the moon floss toilet paper conversation at one point. But on the road trip, they go to another location that we've actually had before, which is the Trojan nuclear plant.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So off in the distance, you can see that the Zymo scampers about. So,
and as they're escaping, we also get a shot of the Portland skyline. They're on one of the bridges.
Yeah. And so after this car trip, they drive back to their house, and as they're pulling up at their house, Jace hits someone with his car. It turns out, like, as we've seen them get chased through the barrels, we see Jace's character get hit by, not like as the car is screeching to a halt, he kind of bounces off the hood of the car. it turns out that's Jace himself driving the car that hit him. And that genuinely surprised me. It was
Yes.
kind of nice. Although I don't know if it holds up because that hadn't happened yet, and it was an alternate future where the future past was altered through the bunk bed conversations, and they ended up getting married. So, but other than that, I didn't have a whole lot of problems with the looping time travel of the movie. It did kind of add up.
Yeah, I don't know that if you tried to put it down on paper, it would all work out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but no time travel movie would work out putting pen to paper, to be fair.
But I'm willing to give this movie a hard pass.
So throughout this, and we've said a couple times about these time terrorists, which are also kind of these Power Ranger type costume people, and we see them every time Kayla and Jace show up at the time portal in the future. They're always, these time terrorists are showing up and chasing them off. What is the plan of these time terrorists? What is their objective? I've never figured out. Or is that the thing that's revealed at the end to be, are there time terrorists, we'll say for now. Mark?
Not exactly. I don't know like what the motivation is other than
Love.
disguise, you know, like so that they're not seen by the originals, if you will.
Right.
That they can interact with them and not, you know, but
It's basically
what the motivation was, I don't know.
No spoilers.
At this point in the story, all we know about the time terrorists is that they seem to want to plunder from the past. I think that's what Sarge
and
described
greed,
it as.
They talked a little bit about greed, but it always does look like they are chasing and showing up right when Jace and Kayla do. So then I was wondering, so if the time terrorists have this plot for greed or to plunder or whatever it is being said, how do Jace and Kayla figure into any of this? They don't have like secret information that the future needs. It's like they have just accidentally showed up somehow, but their use for the future is not known. Like, this is not a John Connor, we need him to lead the resistance because he has the secret information. It's just accidental.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
Like, why do the time portals show up in the first place, I guess?
Yeah, in the first place, I think if you go back to the very start of the movie, the first time travel shenanigans that we see is actually Zymo going...
Zymo.
Because Zymo ends up in the house and under the bed, and he reads the Facebook.
That's right.
And he plays around with the light switch. And I think Zymo actually sets the whole story in motion. And I think it's because Zymo, I think Sarge at the very beginning of the movie made a comment about Zymo in his research found these 4 people who potentially would have a large impact on the future. And are we going to get into spoilers yet?
We might as well at this point.
We can, yeah.
So
last chance for spoilers.
Go watch the movie now.
Yes.
So I think that Zymo sees that these people could potentially, in one potential timeline, set it up and protect time travel from other people abusing it. And in order for that to happen, Zymo has to travel. I don't know.
Because so it's revealed towards one of the ends. So this cycle kind of goes over and over of Kayla and Jace being chased. Then it ends up being that they're chased by Jace in one of the costumes. And so it's the cyclical time travel thing. And at the end, it is then revealed that at some point, Zymo has created the armor costumes of the time terrorists based on a drawing that Jace had for some reason. I don't remember why. Did he just draw it when he got back to his time, or?
I was so confused by that.
I'm just looking at a bunch of blank faces.
We haven't even talked about that aspect of the story.
Because yes, the roommate, what's his bucket? Is
Thad
is keeping a time journal, right?
Yes,
right.
Based on the stories that Chase told him.
Right, and so one of those must have been like incredibly detailed illustrations because Zymo has created the costumes of the time terrorists, which then Jace and Kayla put on to scare an earlier version of themselves in the time portal area. So now that raises the question, are there time terrorists, or was it just Jace and Kayla this whole time trying to repair the damage that was done to the time?
Yeah,
space
they are the
continuum?
time terrorists.
But okay, I'm with you, Mark, and I know you're trying to do the movie solid, but it also seems like Sarge knows about the time terrorists, why they're doing it, and he says that thing about greed and plunder.
No, Sarge is just playing along because by the time the time terrorists are introduced, and I'm talking about Kayla and Jace dressed up as the time terrorists, they are doing that for a reason. And Sarge is in on their plan. And I think Sarge is just playing along to work with them and try and repair and make the cycle complete.
Because at one point, Sarge, the Doctor Who robot, says, I can only listen to the first people that found me, which is weird, which is why he listens to the time terrorists. Well, at one point, Kayla and Jace go back 200 years, at some point in between,
Right.
and they take control of the time god. Well, then, okay. Who built the time god then? Who built Sarge? What is Sarge? What's happening?
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the third cycle.
Okay.
The third cycle. So ultimately, at the end of the second cycle, Kayla and Jace get together, and then they live happily ever after for what, another 10 years?
Unclear. But
okay, yeah. It's like 10 years in a different timeline. This
they
is
have
the
a child
timeline.
now.
Yeah, this is the timeline where Kayla and Jace are together, and Thad and Una get together.
Una is confused.
Una is the audience.
You know, I looked at the IMDb. That is her actual real name. Is
Yes,
Una.
It is.
Yeah.
The
So
actress's
apologies
name
to Una
is Una.
for the confusion.
So now we are in phase 3. Phase 1, they get home. Phase 2, they fall in love. Where does the story go from here? Well, apparently, I guess the fact that there is way in the distant future, there are such thing as time terrorists. It really concerns the group of the 4, and they feel the need to enact a plan to ultimately stop the time terrorists and make sure that no one can, at this point, affect the timeline and protect time. Is that right?
I think so. At this point in the movie, this part of the movie takes place in 2011, which is pretty great because did you see at one point a cell phone rings and like one of the characters just picks up this weird tiny black box and like talks into it, because like they made this in like whatever 98 or 2001 depending, but then it's set now in 2011.
Oh,
and so
did this movie
do...
predict the iPhone?
Yes, the iPhone
totally
looked like a microphone box, like a lapel mic box that you can clip on the back of your belt. So yeah, that's in 2011. At one point, I couldn't figure out when or where we were, but then I gave credit to the movie for not doing that. Where are we? You mean when are we? Joke that always comes with these movies. Well, it is confusing because it is the bonsai theory of time travel. Do you guys remember picture Thad going through his
Yes.
bonsai.
They were
theory of time
using
travel.
a tree and the tree's branches as a metaphor for
Oh,
time
right.
travel.
Yeah, and he tore out. So it's like he called it the bonsai theory of time travel, and then holds up like a fern, which was weird. But like he peels one of the things off and is like, "This is like altering time." Now there'll be a new branch that grows here, but it's a different branch to kind of show the different timeline on that. So in this 2011 future, Thad and Una become politicians,
Yes.
and I don't know what they did, but they did something about time travel or made people aware of it, or
So there is some sort of secret government project that they suspect, if left unchecked, will ultimately turn into the Backtime labyrinth. So they want to enact legislation to either get rid of this project or make sure that there are checks in place to let it keep from getting out of hand.
that was unclear. And like, did they invent time travel in order to stop time travel? But that can't be possible either, because like it happened before any of them were involved. Like with Back to the Future, the DeLorean starts it. Like, and then they go back and change stuff or whatever. In this movie, they are abducted into time travel first, and then everything unfolds. So like, they can't invent it and then experience. Perhaps I'm weighing a little too hard on Backtime, but
Yeah, there is some sort of line about the government having a project that would lead to time travel.
okay. But and I did not write the time code, and I'm kicking myself. But at one point, you kind of hear a voiceover of Thad and Una, the politicians, kind of talking about, keeping time travel like safe or whatever. And you hear Una's echoey voice say, "We can create a future that doesn't suck," which is
I
pretty
love
great.
love that.
But then, so at the point where we see Zymo showing that he built the armor for the time terrorists, and he's trying to, since he can't speak, he's trying to explain this to Jace and to Kayla, why he did this or what they are. And Kayla keeps defending him and saying, Zymo, don't be mean to Zymo. He's just a kid. But it has been established that he has been around for hundreds of years. What is Zymo? What is he?
Just a kid.
He's just a 200-year-old kid who builds armor from scratch in a cave next to a robot.
And steals sunglasses.
And which the time god knew what sunglasses were, which didn't make any sense to me. The time god does not have eyes.
Well, if he's a time god, he's been around to see everything.
But has he? Or was he created by Jason Kayla?
It doesn't matter. He's got that little time portal that he can look back on the past, any point in the past. And he's probably been reading up on his 1990s eyewear fashion.
I guess that's why I'm confused. If the time portal has existed, why Jace and Kayla are involved in any of this? Like, they did not have a secret key, a secret code, secret information to help anything. Oh, well, I guess it's just Zymo's mistake. I guess we figured out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's even debatable whether it was a mistake, whether Zymo was just trying to cause mischief, or if Zymo somehow knew that these people would be important to the future of the development of time travel and needed to get the story into motion. It's unclear. But eventually in part 3, so the plan is for Jace and Thad to go into the future and do whatever they're going to do to save time travel and preserve it. But it ends up being Jace and Kayla that get sucked into the future again.
Right.
And that's when they put on the time terrorist costumes and tie up all the other time cycle loose ends.
Yeah, because now their role is to stop their past selves from doing so they basically scare their past selves away in the future to make sure more things aren't screwed up. So that's how we learn maybe there has never been a
Right.
Zor or Sorgon.
And there becomes there's a time when they're just hanging around and they have to wait for their past selves to reach a certain point in the time loop before they get involved, and they've got like a half hour to kill, so they decide to just go, all of them including Sarge and Zymo, they go and they play in the gorge and they like toss a frisbee around.
I loved seeing the gigantic Time Lord body and a Zymo running around a field overlooking the gorge. That made my heart so happy.
Can you imagine like seeing that filmed with
Oh
no
my
context?
gosh. Just that. But that robot costume was super cool for what it was supposed to be. I loved it.
Yeah.
I wonder where it is now.
Oh, we need to get that to Movie Madness.
Oh my gosh.
I wonder,
Amazing.
is Stephen Miller still alive? Is he still with us? Why did he stop making movies?
He's
Do we know?
so hard to search because of Stephen Miller with a PH is on the Trump administration, and so
right.
And there's also another Stephen Miller who's a film director, a different Stephen Miller.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that'll be our goal, is to hunt down. That would be amazing to have any of the costumes from this movie. What did they? I mean, they wouldn't destroy them. They were much too nice and expensive. And
another cool place, if we could get some of these in the Peculiarium on display.
Oh yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Man. Well, maybe the actor who played Zymo will return our calls, and we could have our own adventure of ourselves. I did like how when Jason and Kayla got together at the end, kind of for final, Sarge robotically says, "I wish I had a heart and lips." What?
Because he wanted a kiss. He was watching them make out. He was being a creepy robot.
So also at the end, something like, as all these loose ends are being tied up, and then I'm feeling good about where the movie's going, there's a scene where Kayla and Jace get returned to the alternate future where they have been married and have a daughter and all of that stuff. And the daughter is like, "Oh yeah, you're back," and looks at Jace's hand and sees a scar. And the Time Lord's like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I stopped you from touching the side of the time portal, which was 900 degrees. And they go back to a different shot where Jace is by himself in the time portal room, dressed like whatever he's dressed like, and touches the side of the time portal, gets the scar, and falls on the ground.
Right.
But then that didn't seem to change or do anything.
No, that was the time when Jace was about to go chase himself and Kayla through the barrel factory. But because they spent too much time playing in the gorge, they missed that opportunity when they were supposed to come back and tell him not to touch it. And you think that, oh my God, they're going to fail now. But then ultimately it was like, that was a close one.
I mean, they just got a scar on his hand. That is so funny that their picnic in the gorge was just too compelling, and they forgot to. But well, okay, I couldn't. But no, I don't. So at the end, I had what happens when you touch the time door? Because Sarge says something about how that repaired the time continuity, or there was some comment about how that finally fixed this time continuity. Did you guys catch that, or am I?
I don't think I caught that.
I didn't.
Okay, well, it was said at the same time, and I thought, well, maybe that caused a rip because it kind of made the time portal shake or zap or whatever, and I thought, well, maybe that somehow fixed a plot hole that they realized that they had. But it's a surprising lack of plot holes for a B movie about time travel. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah, I think that the storyline is a couple of steps above everything else about this movie. The budget, like the ambition with this movie was pretty high.
And I would be curious to see what the budget was, because like that whole time, it's not like the labyrinth of time was huge, like in Labyrinth, but there was a couple different rooms and sets, and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
like even the
know.
bunk bed room looked like the one from the Matrix. It was like that kind of stark two bunk bed. Like they put a lot of heart and actual effort into it, and it did not, like when I saw the costumes, the same thing I said about the Power Rangers one. They both looked cheap, kind of on purpose, but they did not look cheap like they were slapped together. Right? It was
Right.
a purposeful aesthetic, I thought.
I'd really like to find out more information about this movie, but I think that there is less information about this film over any other film we've watched online. It's almost like this movie doesn't exist anymore.
Like even on a Google search, I didn't get very much at all.
No one has ever like reviewed this movie. I don't think anyone's ever done a podcast on it.
No. Well, I mean, clearly it was a passion project because Stephen Miller was the writer, the director, the editor. He was. I saw his name a couple other times in the credits too, but that's, I think, almost even more impressive because like a lot of these passion projects made by one person, The Room, for example, are all like super tone deaf in a lot of ways. Like they're above their pay grade. They don't understand, how to do all these things. But I didn't really get any incompetence out of this. I didn't get like that usual flavor of like really trying for something and not understanding how to achieve it.
Well, this was Stephen Miller's third film by this point.
It was. I can't believe I had the whole trilogy just sitting in my hands here.
Right
and Love and Dynamite.
They all seem so different.
Love and Dynamite looks like a real movie.
Well, a real movie. It has Dan Haggerty in it. How could it not be a real movie? So yeah, I'll be interested to see. This was his third movie, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Visions was first, then Love and Dynamite, and then Backtime.
Wow.
Is one of those videos in PAL?
I don't know. This one's in VHS. This one's in. I don't know. I'd have to look.
I think one of them is in PAL.
Maybe. I guess we'll find out when we put it into watch it one of these days.
Oh, I know which one. Rocket A. Ritchie was in PAL.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, well, is there anything else? I did notice that like I said, this movie is on YouTube, and the only copyright flag that it got was because of the Pink Martini song at the end, which plays over the credits, I think. There were a couple other super weird song titles, and I wrote a couple down. One of them was God Gun, which I thought was strange. One of them was Cynornologus, which I don't believe is a word, but then my favorite, Styrofoam Wig Face, was the name of one of the songs in this movie.
Did you notice if they were all by the same person or by the same...
Those three ones were from the same group. It looked like. I forgot to write down their name, but then there was the Pink Martini song. Like I said, that's the one that got flagged. So
I wonder if Pink Martini remembers that they are in this film.
I don't know. Maybe they can help track down Stephen Miller. Well, is there anything else that
there was one more thing that I had that I forgot to mention, and I wanted to point out back in Ring 1, so the first section of the movie, when Jace and Kayla are trying to escape the labyrinth, there's this scene where they're trying to crawl their way out of a tunnel that is above them, and Jace throws Kayla up so that she can grab onto a bar and pull herself up. And while she's just dangling there, Jace literally climbs up her. He like grabs her and pulls himself up using her hanging body.
I had wrote down, he's climbing her.
Yeah.
They both had tremendous upper body strength.
It's like one of those cartoons where
wearing the bridesmaid dress while he climbs her up a...
It was so weird.
I did like when Thad at one point in the beginning, Una says something about, why don't you just go back to reading your comic books? He goes, not comic books, they're graphic novels. Well, does that close the book on Backtime?
Yeah, I just feel like if it didn't come across in our discussion, like this is in the upper echelon, the top tier of Portland films. Like more people need to know about this movie.
And I think you're right. It is that heart, because even with some of our other more B movie favorites that we've had, that seemed more like let's make a movie to make a buck type thing. This seems more lovingly planned out, especially for an ambitious. I mean, time travel is an ambitious subject to do and to attempt to get right, and I think he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, this
Yeah, I totally agree.
also might be one of the first films that we've covered that I feel is truly a hidden, undiscovered gem. Like I don't think
Yep.
anyone else has dug this one out.
I wish tonally it was a little, because at some points, like we said, it did kind of go for zany comedy, but then that wasn't the whole tone of the movie, and so that was a little. And here's another point. What is Zymo? They keep putting him in the front seat, and he can't figure out how to open the door of the car. He is shown to have been built this
Locked himself in.
elaborate armor by himself in a cave, but he could not figure out how to open a door.
But when he did, he had disassembled the door and poured out the speakers and the speaker wire and the.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
Was that after or before he accosted the woman in the car with a chicken?
Oh, yeah, that was the real estate agent. Yeah.
Yes, driving her convertible BMW down the road. Well, I think that is it. That was, like I said, really fun. You can find this on YouTube, and maybe Stephen Miller will give a copyright strike to the YouTube, and we can hunt him down that way.
Ooh.
So here's hoping. I'll just post us on every YouTube channel I can find.
Well, let's in that case, why don't you go ahead and upload his other two videos and really put those feelers out.
Share.
There we go. Well, coming to a YouTube channel near you that may or may not be called RIP VHS. So keep an eye out for that. Last words. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe we should continue the Stephen Miller train, and I'm really excited to dig in and see one of his other films now.
All right. Well, should we do?
I'm all about it.
I'm holding them up here. Should we do Love and Dynamite, or should we do Vision?
I think we should continue going in reverse chronological order.
Okay, so that's Visions next, or
No,
Love and Dynamite. Okay. It always in my head reminds me of Love and Basketball, so I have a feeling I'm going to be very disappointed. There is going to be nothing in common between that and Love and Basketball. But well, Brian, the Unipiper, has not been able to get out much in these past few weeks. But if people want to keep up with him, where can they go to find out about the Unipiper?
Well, I have been, in order to get my exercise in, I've been making a tour of Portland's neighborhoods lately. So I've been taking daily rides. I went through Ladd's Addition last week and Laurelhurst. And so if you would like to see the Unipiper come through your neighborhood in these times of quarantine, send me a message on social media and let me know where you live and what neighborhood you'd like to see me hit up next.
Nice. Yes, on all social media as the Unipiper. Mark, what about you with that dry cough over there? Feeling
I covered
feverish,
my cough.
are you?
No. We test our temperature every 4 hours. I'm in a household with Nicholas, so
yes,
he requires that. The Mark and Toddcast can be found on Fun Employment Radio alongside Portland the Movies. And you and I talk about things going on in Portland and sciencey things.
Yes. Find out at markandtoddcast.com. And Fun Employment Radio is still doing shows 5 days a week. And they are now quarantined in Greg's house, recording from there, which is where they originally started their show. So speaking of Backtime, they are back back 10 years ago in the spare room that they started Fun Employment as. So, and they're doing lots of fun things like little happy hours and get-togethers when they can. So go support them. It's great that they're still able to do their show. Speaking of, we do have a Patreon for the show, but there's probably a lot more important things for you to be doing with your money right now. So you are more than welcome, if you are a Patreon supporter, to find a different cause to use that money towards this month. We'd love it if you kept it with us, but there are a lot more need out there, and we would completely understand if that was the case. So don't worry about that. But thank you for your support. We will be back next month with what? Oh, with Love and Dynamite.
Love and Dynamite.
Join us then. Mark, take us out with probably not the Pink Martini song at the end, because that's the only thing that's flagging the copyright. So
I don't have anything queued up at all.
Okay. Well, then we'll take you out with this. We will see you guys later.
Bye.
To be
Adios.
determined.